There is something nobody will ever tell you to your face. When you were younger and you said the wrong thing, the world handed you a shield. He's young. He doesn't know better yet. That shield protected you for 40, 50, 60 years without you ever noticing it was there. Then one quiet morning, the shield is gone. Nobody announces it. Nobody hands you a note. You say the same kind of thing you always said, and this time the room goes still. The daughter-in-law looks at her plate. The grandson reaches for his phone. Something has shifted, and you are the last person in the room to feel it. A 2019 AARP survey of 2,580 adults over 60 found that 43% reported feeling invisible in conversation. Almost half. And not one of them was told why. Tonight, I want to tell you why. 5 behaviors quietly age a person in other people's eyes. And a way out at the end. A tall man with a small heart is still a small man. The mirror that matters at our age is not the one on the wall. It's the one other people hold up after you walk out of the room. Let's start. The first behavior is the easiest to fall into and the hardest to see in yourself. Talking too much when elders were rare, an old voice carried weight. Today, there are more people over 65 in the United States, about 58 million as of the 2022 census than ever in history. The voice that used to be rare is now everywhere. And when something is everywhere, people stop listening. Picture a dinner table. 8 people, 3 generations. One person has been talking for 11 minutes without pause. He's circling back to make a small point land. The younger ones have stopped making eye contact. A granddaughter excuses herself to the bathroom and stays gone a little too long. He doesn't notice. He never does. The room always does. There are 3 kinds of talking that quietly destroy how people see you, and I want to name them all. The first is nagging. From your side, it feels like love. I just want what's best for them. From their side, it is a slow, steady drip of disapproval. The more you nag, the less they call. You wanted closeness. The nagging built the wall. The second is repetition. This one is heartbreaking because it usually comes from people who suffered. A bad marriage, a betrayal 30 years ago. The pain was real. But when the story is told at every dinner, every call, every holiday, your own children begin to flinch. They have already grieved it with you. You are asking them to feel the wound one more time. Eventually, they protect themselves. 3 ways we talk ourselves out of love: the nag, the replay, and the phrase, back in my day. Each one of these starts as care. Each one of them ends as distance. Notice which one lives most often on your own lips this week. The third is the phrase that ages a person faster than any wrinkle. Back in my day. When I was your age. You young people just don't understand. Write those phrases down and put them in a drawer. Every time those words leave your mouth, the person across from you hears something you didn't mean. You meant, I have experience that could help. They heard, you are inferior and I am about to lecture you. There's an old proverb, close your mouth, open your wallet. Not because what you have to say has no value, because at our age, silence carries more weight than speech. A beautiful person doesn't announce what's inside them. It shows on its own. One commenter on a recent video about aging said it better than I could. The older I get, the more I realize a closed mouth is sometimes the loudest dignity I own. The second behavior is the most common and the most invisible to the person doing it. Bragging. When I meet someone who brags constantly about the house, the car, the children, the old job title, the famous person they once shook hands with, I have learned something over the years. Something I want you to see, because once you see it, you can never unsee it. The people who brag the most are almost always the people who have the least. I don't mean the least money, I mean the least inside, the least peace, the least security, the least of whatever it is they are trying to prove. The trophy is shined up. The trophy case is empty. Think about it. When you meet a man who is truly accomplished, what do you notice? He doesn't bring it up. He doesn't have to. His life speaks for him. The way he listens, the way he treats the waiter, the way he asks about your family before mentioning his own. The accomplishment leaks out without him pouring it. But the chronic bragger, look closely at the life behind the words. Not at the words, at the life, and you will find almost every single time something hollow underneath. A psychological term for this is compensatory self-enhancement. The louder the announcement, the deeper the doubt it is trying to cover. All polish, no substance. The fruit looks beautiful on the outside. You bite in, and there is nothing there. Keep this one somewhere, you'll see it. The richest people I have ever known never had to mention being rich. The wisest never had to mention being wise. Why does the bragging happen? Because somewhere inside, the person knows. They know there isn't enough on the inside to speak for itself, so they have to speak for it. Loudly, constantly, to anyone who will listen. Bragging is not strength. Bragging is the sound of a person covering a leak. And the saddest version of this, the one I most want grandparents listening tonight to hear, is bragging about your children. Of the 3 things you should never brag about, your spouse, your money, your children, the worst is your children. Because your friend smiling and nodding across the table may be lying awake every night about his child, the one who is struggling, the one he doesn't talk about because the pain is too fresh. Bragging about your child in front of a parent in quiet pain is like bragging about your health in front of someone in a hospital bed. If you must brag, and I understand the pride, save it for the one safe room, your spouse. That's it. That's the only place where pride does no damage. The third behavior is harder to see than the first 2, because it doesn't happen on your lips. It happens behind your eyes, judging people before you know them. There is an old story I want to retell, borrowed from a Native American tradition and bent slightly to fit what I want to say. Every person, the story goes, carries 3 animals inside them, 2 wolves and 1 owl. The first wolf is named Assumption. This wolf looks at a young man covered in tattoos and decides what kind of person he is before the young man says a single word. This wolf looks at a woman in expensive clothes and decides she is shallow. Assumption never asks. Assumption already knows. The second wolf is named Bias. Bias is older and more dangerous. Bias has been fed for 60, 70 years. Bias says, people from that part of town are all like this. People who voted that way are all the same. Bias doesn't look at the person standing in front of you. Bias looks at a category and stuffs the person into the category whether they fit or not. Both wolves live inside every one of us. You cannot kill them. Anyone who claims to have no assumptions, no biases, is lying to themselves first and to you second. Psychologists call this implicit bias. And a 2017 meta-analysis of over 200 studies confirmed that nearly every adult tested carries it, regardless of education or intent. 2 wolves, 1 owl. Assumption decides before the person speaks. Bias decides before the person walks in. The owl, the one we have to feed deliberately, waits, looks, and asks one more question before it concludes. Tonight, before you go to bed, ask yourself which animal you fed most often this week. But there is a third animal, the owl. The owl is named Witness. The owl does only one thing. The owl looks. The owl actually looks at the person standing in front of you, in this moment, with this face, with this story you have not yet heard. The owl asks before it answers. The owl says, I do not know this person yet. Let me find out. Here is what nobody told us. The older you get, the louder the wolves become, and the quieter the owl gets. Unless you fight for it. You feed the owl by asking one more question before you decide, by letting one more sentence come out of their mouth before you write them off, by saying, sometimes out loud, I do not know this person yet. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote something I have carried for 30 years. When we meet a person, we should set aside everything we think we know about where they come from, and feel as though we are speaking directly to something sacred in them. That is the owl talking. The wolves will be with you until the day you die. The question is only which one you feed today. The fourth behavior is one many will defend before I finish describing it. Letting yourself go. I can already hear the pushback. I'm too old to care. I've earned the right not to fuss. Vanity is for the young. I want to agree with you. Partly. But I need to draw a distinction that matters more than people realize. There is a version of letting go that is beautiful. A woman who lets her hair go silver because she has stopped apologizing for time. A man who throws out the die because he no longer needs to impress a room. That is not letting yourself go. That is letting go of the performance. That is freedom. I admire it. But there is another version. The man who stopped shaving for 3 days, not because he chose a beard, but because he stopped caring. The woman in the same stained sweater 4 days running, not because she's busy, but because some small light inside her has gone dim. That is not freedom. That is often the early shape of depression, isolation, or the slow drift of a person who decided the world has stopped looking. 2 kinds of letting go. One is releasing the performance of youth, and that is freedom. 2 is releasing the care of yourself, and that is fading. Know which one you are doing this morning when you look in the mirror. The difference between the 2 is the whole second half of your life. The world does still look. Your grandchildren look. Your daughter-in-law looks. The young woman at the bank who decides whether you get a smile or a sigh, she looks. A 2018 study published in the Journal of Aging Research, tracking 1,260 adults over 65, found that those who maintained daily grooming routines reported 31% lower rates of depressive symptoms. The act of caring for the outside reminds the inside that you are still here. Don't chase youth. The men on television trying to look 30 at 60 have their own sadness. Chase dignity, clean clothes, a combed head, shoes that aren't falling apart, a coat that fits, a small attention to how you walk into a room. You are still worth the trouble. Say that out loud tomorrow morning if you need to. The fifth behavior is the hardest to name because it touches something tender, demanding respect because of your age. I have watched this at hundreds of family dinners. An older man walks into a room and waits for someone to offer him the head of the table. When it doesn't happen, the face hardens, the mouth tightens, the whole evening is colored by a wound nobody can name. I want to say this carefully. The generation listening tonight did sacrifice. You worked, you raised children on too little, you held families together through things younger people cannot imagine, you earned something real. But here is the part that hurts to say. You cannot demand it. The moment you demand respect, you lose it. The moment you insist on the head of the table quietly stops wanting you there. Respect at our age is not collected. It is handed to you freely the moment you stop reaching for it. And there's a place where this principle meets the most painful part of family life. Money. I have seen this pattern too many times. A parent gives and gives and gives to the child who demands. School, wedding, a business that won't survive, another business after the first one fails. The parent gives, trying to earn love that should have been free. And meanwhile, there is often another child, the quiet one, the one who calls on Sunday, the one who shows up when someone is sick, the one who never asks for anything, and that child gets less attention, less money, less of the will. I want to tell you something it took me a long time to learn. Give to the child who helps you. not the child who demands from you. The demanding child will drain you to the last dollar and resent you for the dollar you didn't give. The helping child will love you whether you give them anything or not. That is exactly why they deserve more. The same principle applies to respect itself. The people who demand it never get it. The people who quietly earn it cannot stop receiving it. There's an old line worth remembering. Behave like an adult, and you become an elder. Demand to be treated like one, and you stay an old person. The difference between an elder and an old person is not age, it is posture. So we have walked through 5 behaviors, 5 mistakes, 5 quiet ways that people our age push away the very love we are trying to hold on to. If I left you here, I would be guilty of exactly what I warned you about at the start. Criticism without a door. So let me give you the door. There are 3 things the most beautifully aged people I have ever known all carry. 3 crowns. The first crown is attention, not the kind that asks to be looked at. The kind that looks. These elders walk into a room and the first thing they do is notice. They notice who is quiet. They notice the daughter-in-law who looks tired. They ask one good question, and they listen to the answer all the way to the end. That is the crown of noticing. The second crown is generosity. And I don't mean money, though it can include money. I mean the generosity of room. Room for other people to be themselves. Room for opinions you disagree with. Room for a grandson figuring out his life on a timeline that doesn't match yours. The generous elder doesn't say, "Why did you do that?" They say, "Tell me more about that." They make space. People come back to people who make space. 3 crowns of a true elder. Attention. Notice who is quiet. Generosity. Make room for who they are. Connection. Keep at least one real friend under 40. These 3 crowns replace the 5 behaviors. Put down the 5, pick up the 3. The third crown is connection. The most respected elders I know are not the ones with the most friends their own age. They are the ones with friends across generations. A 75-year-old with a real friendship with someone 30 has refused to let their world shrink. They have stayed curious. They have kept the owl alive. And here is the part I most want you to hear. You may be thinking, I wasn't raised this way. Nobody showed me how to do these things. I hear you. Only about 30% of who you are was handed to you. The family, the era, the wounds you didn't choose. The other 70% is still your choice. Who you sit next to, what you read, whose warmth you stand close to until some of it rubs off. Human beings keep changing until the day they die. Years ago, the psychiatrist Thomas Harris wrote a small book called I'm Okay, You're Okay. Inside that title is the whole map of how to live the second half. There are 4 postures. I'm not okay, you're okay. The person who shrinks and apologizes for existing. I'm okay, you're not okay. The person who corrects and judges. I'm not okay, you're not okay. The bitter one nobody calls anymore. And the 4th, I'm okay, you're okay. I am allowed to take up space. So are you. That is the posture we are aiming for. That is where the 3 crowns lead. Before I close this with the one thing I want you to take with you tonight, something quiet has changed on this channel. There is now a way to walk alongside this work, if you have ever felt moved to. It is called Friend of WISECAST. $4.99 a month. A small badge beside your name. Episodes a day before everyone else. Nothing more is asked of you. If you choose to, the button is just below this video. If you don't, the work continues exactly the same. Either way, thank you for being here. The campfire rule. Too far, you freeze and grow bitter. Too close, you burn the people you love. The whole art of aging well is finding your distance from the fire, close enough to be warmed, far enough that no one flinches when they hear your voice on the phone. There's an old line I think about often. If you envy no one, and you hate no one, you are the richest person alive. You don't need a bigger house. You don't need a louder voice at the table. You don't need to prove anything, ever again. Just put down the 5. Pick up the 3. The world is still looking. It always was. Now, finally, you have something worth looking at. Good night.